All right, guys, welcome to Professional Guild of America. Today, I am here with Israel, Ron, and Karen. We have a special episode for you, getting to know more so of Karen's story and background and just her experience in business. So between Israel, Ron, and Karen, we should have a wonderful episode. So we'll start off with Karen. So Karen, it's Sunday. It's the middle of June. It's actually Flag Day and the anniversary of the Army's 245th anniversary. But a lot going on today. So what's new with you so far?
What is new with me? I am, since this whole COVID-19 thing, everything has been the same. I've just been running and gunning to try to keep my events business afloat, keep it going. And I do little else really. I'm just very devoted to seeing this through. And so I don't know that I have anything riveting to share other than I'm sort of working all the time, but I feel really grateful and lucky to be able to have the opportunity to do so. So I'm definitely not complaining.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, well, yeah, well, let's kind of dive right in. So, just talking about your story, kind of what we want to hit on is like lessons you learned from mom, dad, business, any institutions you went to. So just kind of take us, just walk us through like what we should know.
Well, interesting. So, my business is an events-based business, and it is about bringing buyers and sellers of technology together to give them an opportunity to create a personal relationship. The idea being that business is often driven by a personal connection, and whether that's new business being developed or existing business being growing as a result of a personal connection. And I would say that, really throughout my career, I have drawn upon project management experience to drive my business. And as well, great leaders that I have worked for who have believed in me and created an opportunity for me to thrive and grow. So, I majored in Japanese in college, so that was amazing, but it has not been the driving factor of my events business. Although when I was in college, I was the events chair for my sorority, and that's really where I developed the passion for events.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. So starting, let's just kind of take it a little bit more granular. So speaking in terms of like your parents, mom and dad, were there any specific lessons that you could take from them that you've applied today in business that have been very useful?
I think my parents always gave me the freedom to explore. I was an only child, and so I've always been very independent and strong. And I would say that I have, certainly exhibited those skills through having my business. So I think just really the freedom to be me.
I'm very curious. Now, when we look at having the opportunity to create your own vision and to be able to be in control of that vision, if there are a lot of younger people who, when they go through the traditional route of the education system, which I feel like today is a bit I won't say archaic, but outdated, because to your point, you're dealing with parties that are involved in the technology sector, and I feel like personally the schooling system isn't up to par to where the technology is heading. But there are a lot of younger folks that are aspiring business owners in general, want to do well for themselves, but they don't exactly know how to go about what to choose and study. And it's interesting, you went more of the liberal arts route. And my question to you is, would you encourage people who are unsure what they want to do? Like, how would we go about doing that? Like, trying to find, what do I do if I don't know what I want to do? And you find your passion, to your point, in the middle of that experience. I'm just really curious to see how you went about reconciling the both, and Just really curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so it's a great question, Israel, and a lot of different questions in there. So I will attack
Sorry
it a
about
few
that.
different. No, it's good. I'll attack it a few different ways. So yes, I did go to a liberal arts school, and having a handful or so of years in between my college experience and today, looking back, sometimes I wouldn't change a thing, and sometimes I would do things differently. I think in college, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up now, let alone when I was 18 and heading off to college. And I think that that's okay. I think people feel, probably even more so today, a pressure to
Yes.
have their life charted for them. And I think it's just very unrealistic. I mean, life happens, and life presents you with different opportunities along the way that you never could have dreamt of. And I
Mm-hmm.
think if you lock yourself in, I mean, certainly if you're planning to be a doctor or a lawyer, or something like that, you need to set yourself on a course, or you'll never graduate with the requisite degrees. But if you
Right.
really don't know what you want to be when you grow up, which I think is, probably 80% of humankind, no
Mm-hmm.
matter their age, I think that's okay. And, in my opinion, college is going to teach you how to think. It's not going to teach you how to be an XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're studying to be a doctor, certainly you're going to learn biology and, all the science behind it, but you need to get in and work in a medical capacity to truly be able to learn to be a doctor. And I think the same is true with any career. And also, um, I was talking to a group about children and, access to careers. And
Mm-hmm.
kids don't know what careers are out there. I don't know what careers are out there.
Mm-hmm.
You watch television, or you meet people in life, and so you get exposed to different careers. But again, I was talking to someone, and they said that they drove some students. They were part of a program. They drove some students by a building, and they said, what kind of jobs are in that building? I think it was a hospital. And they said, there are doctors and nurses. And that was all they knew.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And really, there are, hundreds and hundreds of jobs that exist in that hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So the opportunity for jobs is really limitless. And even today, people create jobs literally out of nothing, that, something that wouldn't have been a job before.
Right.
There are ways to turn that into a job now. So I think it's ever evolving. And I would say that, school is a place to learn to think, and learn to be a critical thinker, and to refine your cognitive skills. And, in terms of starting your own business, I think that was another aspect of your
Mm-hmm.
question. It's hard when I look at myself and think that I'm an entrepreneur. It's kind of unusual for me to look at myself that way. Um, I am one, but I have a hard time sort of labeling myself that way, because it feels like entrepreneurs are people who are so smart about going about what they're doing, and they're so calculated, and they've become an entrepreneur, and it's so exotic. And in becoming an entrepreneur, talking to other entrepreneurs, it actually most of the time happens accidentally. People lose their job or have some hardship, and they have to figure out how to put one foot in front of the other. And that's how entrepreneurialism happens, has been my experience in talking to other entrepreneurs. So I think
Mm-hmm.
also just allowing yourself that freedom, that, when one door closes, another opens, and becoming an entrepreneur can often come out of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And a follow-up question on that is, being an entrepreneur is something that is very difficult, because you need to have a high threshold of pain tolerance, because obviously along the way there are going to be failures, disappointments, setbacks, and whatnot. What would you say has really helped you face some of these challenges, as they're inevitable?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. there was a time that I was being interviewed for a leadership position for a nonprofit organization. And they asked me, how do you get everything done? And I didn't have a great answer for them. They wanted to know what system I employ. And I'm just one of those people that if something needs to get done,
Right.
I will sacrifice sleep and I just get it done. It's just, I know my objective and I get it done. So that's not practical for everyone. Some people might need a system. But I would say you're right. Being an entrepreneur is incredibly painful. And, it's not for everyone. I think that, you hear people say if it were easy, everyone would do it
Right.
about various different things. And I think being an entrepreneur is one of them. Depending on when you start out, your financial resources make a huge difference in your approach to the business. When I started out, Ron and I had both started businesses. So, some of my friends said, oh, well, at least your husband has a job that brings in income. And I thought, well, not really. So we both really were not bringing in income. You do bring in income, but when my experience with being an entrepreneur is that you have to bring in a lot of income to make up for the investment that you make to get your business started. I sold a home. I divested part of a 401k. I took my first year, I took a salary of $6,000, and I tell people, now that's not per month. That was for the whole year.
Wow.
So it was, painful might not be a strong enough word to describe exactly how my first couple of years in business went. I think my second year, I gave myself a raise to about $24,000, which was, that is 4 times my initial salary.
4x.
Still, it was pretty lean in terms of the fact that I had bills to pay. Life still was happening, even though
Right.
we were not making really a living wage. So I think you have to decide what your threshold is for that. I set sort of a clock for myself where I needed to turn a financial corner to be able to, either say this is going to work or it's not going to work. And, I would, definitely my first few years, I would talk about my business as, I'm falling on one grenade at a time, or, I wouldn't talk about speed bumps. I would talk
Right.
about landmines and, every problem that you encounter, again, my experience was they were huge. There was nothing small that came my way. Everything was very make or break. And I don't think I was being dramatic. They're just, not everyone is in it to see you succeed. And, you have to be scrappy to make it work and to overcome those landmines.
That's
Right.
yeah,
No.
that's really intense because like a lot of times people will go through as Ron, trademarked this last time, getting baptized in fire. And most people can't necessarily withstand the fire. And kind of one of my like questions for you is that could you speak on like being self-reliant or being resilient in terms of how that's like helped you? And even though things may not have seemed, I guess, bright in the near future, what was it that gave you that ability to see it through to the end, to the other side? Was it like a belief, like a faith? Was it just like, just having the comfort of like, hey, Ron, we're in this together? Like what exactly like gave you that ability to see it through? Because most people, they fail once and they quit. And kind of my question is like, how do you keep going through different trials and tribulations and you still stick it through? Like, where do you get that from? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I guess I would say that that's almost a DNA thing, right? Because now I remember I talked to someone referred me to a young lady who was, I think she had just graduated college or was about to graduate college, and she wanted to start her own business, and she knew what she wanted to do, and she knew how much she wanted to make, and she knew how she was going to do it. And I thought, good for you, but I don't see this happening. It was so unrealistic from my experience to look at this course she had charted for herself And, I admired it most certainly. But even when you set your goals and you think, I have this product or, this service and I'm going to sell it and I'm going to sell it for X dollars and X number of people are going to want to buy it. And all of those people are going to love it and they're going to buy it again or renew it. And it's just, it can happen. It can absolutely happen. But, it does take a great deal of work and a lot of commitment. I would say that I am a person who I don't enjoy failure, right? I don't think anyone does. And I just do whatever I can to help myself succeed. So, whether that is, when we started, I said, I've done little else in the last few months than work. And, a lot of people have had a nice little vacation with COVID-19. I have a group of girlfriends and we're on a group text chat. And Ron and I were, again, we both are entrepreneurs, so we're working away and we've been really busy. And again, very grateful for that. But my phone was blowing up, just these girls texting back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And my husband said to me, Ron said, he goes, do they have jobs? I said, well, one of them is a teacher. One of them is in pharmaceutical sales. One of them does events for a nonprofit. So, they were in various stages of really limbo, along with most of the planet really was, working. They had their job and they had things to do for their job at home, but it was lighter duty, right, than normal for a lot of people. And that was just not the case for us. And it could have been, I could have gone 10,000 miles an hour or 0 miles per hour. And I guess I've just always been a very hard worker. I'm a doer. And, so for me, it's that, just being a doer and being a person who gets things done. And, Ron often quotes my mom. My mom had a quote that was, must do is a great master. And basically, if something has to happen, you're going to figure out a way to make that happen. And, again, we had bills to pay and, a job had to be done. So I don't know if I have a better answer than that. Then I just, pull from within me and just get things done.
Now, that's a great answer. I mean, there are a couple places where this mantra has been used over time, and I know some more recognized people like Tony Robbins speak on the fact that, we live the life that we must live. And oftentimes, most people live the life that they would like to live, which is why that life never happens. And, in my personal experience, 26, but I did have a startup experience as well. And for me, what the entrepreneurship road also brings, it brings a lot of loneliness, a lot of self-doubt. And if you don't have a really good support system, it's excruciatingly painful and it makes you question everything. And so leaning on that, the question I wanted to ask is, I haven't had the chance to do that, but how is it knowing that, as a group, as a unit, you and your husband are on the same page? Because that is something that leaks into all facets of life.
Yeah. So, interesting question. Again, you're peppering in a couple of different questions there. So one of them I will say is, when you talk about entrepreneurialism being lonely, it is. There's no one to ask. There's no committee. There's no group. You make a decision and, I think over time you build confidence in your decisions because you find out what works and what doesn't work. I am lucky enough to have advisors that I am able to go to with questions, whether they're some of my clients who purchase my services. I can ask their opinions. You know, I have a strong enough relationship where I can vet ideas through them. I also have advisors who are entrepreneurs themselves, and I can ask questions of them. I'm lucky to have a great team, and I've tried to foster a collaborative environment. You know, ultimately, I have the final say because it's my business, it's my vision. But, I can't think of everything. And, to have more minds around the table than just my own is very valuable. So I would say that, you're right, it is lonely, but I think that there are ways to structure your support system in a way that you have resources to draw from. And then as far as Ron and I being on the same page, I think we're like-minded in that we are both, we're both self-driven and goal-oriented. And, I think my business would not work if Ron did not have the same value system. Again, I'm working all the time, and that is not a great work-life balance. That was the other thing that the young lady I talked about. She was very concerned about work-life balance. And I thought, oh my gosh, isn't she so sweet? I don't know that she's going to have that. It was cute that she thought she would. I mean, I think it can come. I thought it was going to come in 2020. I don't know about anyone else on this call, but I thought 2020 was going to be an amazing year. And it has been an amazing year, but certainly in a whole different way than planned. But I think that, having this, having a balance of both of us being driven and understanding, right? If Ron and I are having dinner and he gets a phone call that he has to take, I understand that. And, he understands if I have something come up and I have to address that. And I think that, not all couples are going to have that. There are people that are going to think, it's 5:00 and, you need to be off for the day. And, Ron and I are just not ever off. And that doesn't work for everyone. And it's not the right formula for every entrepreneur either. It just so happens to be ours. Would you add anything to that, Ron?
I would say I would agree with all of that. Personally, as I mentioned in the 2 episodes that we did prior, and I wanted to make this all about Karen because she has a fascinating story, and I'm just so lucky to be able to help and support her and, just be part of this life together. And, I would say, as far as the entrepreneur side of things, I grew up in an entrepreneur home, right? My parents, they owned a business, and, there were Christmases where I got CDs. There were Christmases where I got a new car, right? So it all varied. It was peaks and valleys. But I would say from a security standpoint, I feel more secure being an entrepreneur than beholden to working for a company where you really only have one client. If one of Karen's sponsors or CIOs no longer wants to participate in Technology Ball, that's just one person. If I have a client that decides they want to go with a different loan, that's just one person. Whereas if you work for a company, if they decide that you're no longer in the picture, your whole world is upended. So I think it's a mindset when it comes to entrepreneurship. And, I think you weigh it in a relationship in terms of, I always talk about Technology Ball being the family business, right? I have a day job, which is my lending business, but Technology Ball is a family business, right? So anything that I can do to add to it, that's what we do. And it's not easy, right? It's not easy having a primary job and then also supporting the family business at the same time. And, it is a struggle. It's not easy to do. But I can't really imagine another world, at this point. It's just one of those things. So.
Yeah. I kind of want to pivot into more so the nitty gritty now of like Technology Ball and just how that works, like exactly what it is that you provide for the CIOs and whatnot, and just getting more granular into the tech ball. and then kind of transition to how people can find you and how we can learn about your services and all of that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Technology Ball started as the fundraiser for a nonprofit that I worked for. And I worked for a nonprofit that designed software solutions for other nonprofits. And I was the vice president of development for the nonprofit. And I was charged with doing our fundraisers. We had no fundraisers, and I was supposed to create, sort of a fundraiser world. And, when you look at fundraisers you're invited to participate in, you're invited to, cure a disease or to, feed the underserved, clothe the needy, right? So something that you can wrap your mind around and your heart around, and then hopefully your wallet around, right? Is sort of what the objective is in nonprofit when you're doing fundraisers. And, our mission was driving greater efficiency for other nonprofits for them to do their mission. And, we really couldn't tell their story. We had to tell our story, which was, software. And that's not a normal thing to go to a fundraiser for. So it was very challenging for me to come up with a formula that worked. Why are people going to pay $75 or $250 or whatever it is, right? To come to something to support, we're building software. You know what I mean? It was weird.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were part of an association of other nonprofits that were working across the US, also supplying technology solutions. And in that network, there was a group that was doing an event similar to what we developed in Dallas. And, I collaborated with that group and another group that was doing something similar. So the three of us really talked about the platform and the model. And I took that and I adapted it for the nonprofit that I worked for. And the concept is that we bring buyers and sellers of technology together. So in the tech sector, if you think about, I'll go back to a medical example, not very long ago, there was a model where pharmaceutical companies would take doctors and nurses out and wine and dine them so that they would choose their drug to write prescriptions for. So they would take them to Vegas on, all expense paid trips and things like that. And they would have to go to the conferences and hear about the drugs. And the goal was that was the prescription that they would write for, whatever ailment. And, we really follow a similar model, but in the nerd community. So it's, it's sort of the geek version of that. And, we have software providers, hardware providers, voice over IP, security, data centers, staffing, IT staffing. So any range of products or services that are sold to IT executives, if you think of literally any company that any company, they run on technology. There's a website, they use a cell phone for their business, or they might have, a phone system. They have data in the cloud, they have security issues, they have, all of the things that it takes to run, anywhere from a mom and pop to, some of the largest companies on the planet, certainly. It takes technology to run them. And even when you look at COVID-19, the reason everyone was able to go home and work was because of my nerds, right? So it was all my people who made that happen. These companies stood on the shoulders of their IT executives to make work at home possible. And so I am working in that community, and I have, so sorry, let me go back to the nonprofit. So the nonprofit, we did that for a couple of years. We got a new CEO. And when we got the new CEO, he dramatically changed the nonprofit's approach. He really, he de-diversified our product base and left us basically with one client. And ultimately, that was not an excellent path for the organization. And the nonprofit closed its doors. And in the process of closing its doors, I was left with, I was laid off. So I was left with sort of dusting off my resume and figuring out what I was going to do. So back to your question about, how do you become an entrepreneur? It happened quite accidentally for me because I lost my job. So I had really built Technology Ball with the nonprofit, and I went to my community and asked them if I continued, would they continue to participate? So they did, and that was in 2014. So I'm coming up on my 7th year of business, and I've really been able, I call it, we keep the ball rolling, right? So Technology Ball, I was able to keep the ball rolling. And, so back to your question about how does it work? So these buyers and sellers come together in the tech sector. There are billions and billions and billions of dollars being spent on technologies to run companies. So I'm working with the companies that are selling those technologies. There's a lot of money on the line. I usually work with the marketing person and the salesperson to create an opportunity for them to have access to these technology decision makers. And companies will leverage a marketing budget to get in front of tech decision makers. And sometimes they just want to have FaceTime with their clients. They have existing clients that they don't get to see otherwise. And, it is helpful to maintain a relationship. I think business is a relationship driven thing. And so I'm creating an opportunity for that. And then people that want to meet people, there are not a lot of avenues to get in front of some of the top decision makers. And Technology Ball is one of those avenues in DFW.
Okay. And so, like that being said, so in terms of plans to like expand Tech Ball to say LA or the East Coast or down south, how are you going to be able to, with COVID going on, how are you going to be able to help more people? Are you kind of transitioning your event space to like the online model, or is it mainly driven by the in-person for now?
Yeah, so in person is completely off the table. And that was, Ron and I both have financial backgrounds. I worked in Los Angeles for a mutual fund company, and I joke that I got I got a Google degree in finance because, I had to read everything that came across my desk. And, you start to know what to be worried about in economic scenarios. And as COVID-19 was sort of making its way across the globe, I started getting nervous pretty early, probably mid-February, started having concerns. Ron, was a financial advisor and is currently a mortgage banker. So he certainly has a finger on the pulse of finances. So we got nervous really early. And I started looking at, my season wasn't starting for a couple of months. So I had some time before I was officially, sort of live for the year, and started really reimagining the business to go to a virtual platform. And, again, being an entrepreneur, I had to be creative, which I am pretty good at. So I, put my thinking cap on and came up with some ideas, but I can daydream all day long. And if my sponsors don't like it and the CIOs don't like it, there's literally nothing I can do. So I had to go to my community and I had to vet the idea. So I pulled together a steering committee of the CIOs. So CIO is Chief Information Officer. So they are usually the technology decision maker for, really any company. There are a variety of different titles, but just for general speak, to just use CIO is pretty handy. So I had to go to a group of my CIOs and I presented a concept to them. And, they didn't like it. Actually, they completely changed my concept. And I had to readapt based on their feedback. And then I had to go to my sponsors and say, this is what we're planning. And I had to keep my fingers crossed. The world changed overnight. And I rely on people's marketing dollars to run my business. It's hard to get marketing dollars when business is shut down. So I was really proud to be able to continue to drive business through COVID. I don't think a week has gone by where I haven't actually executed on a sale of sponsorship participation. So, really glad to, again, I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to keep my business running through this. But we're all virtual, and we've moved to, our events have always been very intimate. And we live in Texas, where everything is bigger, as you may have heard. But Technology Ball is, we've really had a more intimate approach, where our events are, 100, 125 people, something like that, for our after work receptions that we've done. A lot of after work events in Texas are, 300, 400 people. So we've really maintained a more intimate environment so that there is an opportunity for FaceTime with the superstars of our group. The CIOs are the people that people want to meet. The CIOs themselves want to meet other CIOs, and the sponsors want to meet CIOs. So we've tried to keep an environment where that's possible. To switch to a virtual model, we wanted to maintain that. So the reason I've worked so much and so hard through this is that I've really got a very bespoke and curated model where I'm trying to directly respond to my sponsors' needs. I take a wish list from every sponsor, and I ask for at least 35 CIOs that they want to meet. Some of them give me, 20, some of them give me 80 that they want to meet. And then I work to align each of the sponsors where they're hopefully no more than one competitor on each call. And I try to align where they're interested in meeting the same person. And then I coordinate a series of calls. I went from doing one event every other month to doing 10 or more events each month. Wow. And it has been a lot of work, a lot of work. Again, very grateful. But Ron was looking at one of my spreadsheets, and he said, I bet there's technology that can actually do that for you. And I said to him, I don't think it could do it as well, because I'm definitely putting a personal touch on it and really trying to make sure that I'm delivering the best possible experience I can for my sponsors and for the CIOs. And one thing I didn't mention about Technology Ball is we have a philanthropic aspect. I came from a nonprofit, and I wanted to maintain that nonprofit element, even though in looking at establishing my company, when I did that in 2014, I thought I would be a nonprofit. But in exploring and talking to CPAs and attorneys on the nonprofit side and the for-profit side, it made better sense to set up a for-profit, because to be a nonprofit, you have to be raising the dollars to do the good work in the community that a nonprofit does. And really, our sponsorships pay for the Technology Ball experience. So they pay for my team when we're doing in-person events, they pay for those. And what we do is we culminate our season with our gala event. And at the gala, that's where we do our fundraising. And we are raising dollars to support STEM education. So science, technology, engineering, and math is very important to this community. And we are looking to drive future technology leaders through our STEM education support. And we fund scholarships for students at the University of Texas at Dallas. So UTD is a local school with a very strong STEM program. So we fund scholarships for students. We actually just launched our third session of a mentor program. We've done different training opportunities. And on our calls, we've actually had students participate where they've showcased the mentor program that we run. We also ran a contest with the students to have them come up with questions that they would like to ask the tech community. And winners of that contest joined us on our calls, and they actually got to ask the questions themselves. So these are students who want jobs from the people that we are getting them on the phone with. So that's been a really rewarding aspect as well. But we're all virtual. And then in terms of expansion, we have looked at other markets, and we were in Silicon Valley for a while. Actually, people wanted us to be in Silicon Beach and look at Los Angeles. Expansion is, it reminds me of those days when I made $6,000 a year. And, to a large extent, expanding into another market will be painful. Again, it's painful every day, but the pain is different now. It's more pleasant pain than the true pain at the beginning. So expansion is on our radar. We've looked at other cities in Texas, and I had somebody recently talk to me about expanding into Arkansas. Walmart is in Arkansas, and there's a lot of business around Walmart, but Walmart runs on technology just like everyone else. So Expansion is in the cards. It is definitely not a 2020 thing because of 2020 went differently than we all saw.
And if I may add, Karen's pivot with Technology Ball. I mean, she's modest. I mean, the only reason why it was able to work, there were two things. Number one is just the sheer loyalty and as Karen mentioned, the curated experience that she brings to the sponsors and these executives. Across the board, technology events have essentially been canceled, right? So being able to meet with CIOs, CTOs, VPs of IT at big conferences, Salesforce, all these big, and even trade shows and even local events, it hasn't happened, right? So the fact that Karen has just developed this loyalty and this it's a community. It's not just about putting on events and making sure that the catering works and everything else. She has a community, and these people care about Karen. They care about Technology Ball. They care about the students. They care about UTD. They care about this progressing with STEM, and they were, the sponsors were so grateful that Karen was able to create this platform where they could continue to do business. Because if you think about it, if everything was shut down and these executives were only able to meet via email or phone calls, but they're so busy because their companies are completely changing, by being able to create that environment where people can get together and foster conversations and deepen relationships even further than in person is really amazing, and what I would say is a pure testament to Karen's modesty is that, there was in Texas, there was a annual Women's Business Award, and Karen nominated 25 different women. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this award is designed for you, Karen. Out of everything you've been able to develop in this community, it was built for you. And I nominated Karen, right? So I'm like, you deserve this award, right? But she was so happy that her friends were awarded this and was just so grateful. So, I'm proud of her.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for I don't mean to interject, but say if somebody's listening to this and they're interested in sponsoring, who are usually the go-to sponsors for your events? Are there more like tech people also, or just other?
Yeah.
Like who's the usual go-to?
Yeah. So we have, basically in this virtual environment, we have sort of two legs to our stool, right? So CIOs might be interested in participating. For them, they get an opportunity for peer access to their peers and peer networking opportunities, which is really valuable to them. They say that the shelf life of a CIO is like 18 months or 24 months or something like that. So there's a lot of turnover traditionally in the CIO space. And, to get a job these days, it's often who you know is more important or as important as what you know. So there is a lot of value in the tech community in having that peer engagement. They also like that we're a low time commitment. There's no cost for the CIOs to participate. And then they love the STEM education cause that we support. So for them, there's a lot of value in participating. Now, our bread and butter, our formula doesn't work without the CIOs, right? But where we make our money is on the sponsorship side. And sponsors are really any good or service company that is interested in selling or getting the attention of these CIOs. I've had the city of XYZ in the Dallas area has expressed interest in participating in our events. And I didn't know why, a city would want to participate. And they want to drive visibility for their community. And they saw Technology Ball as a way to do that. I've talked to car dealerships and banks and, jewelers and you name it. There's a lot of money in tech. So these are high wage earners on the spectrum. And there was some article that came out through Dallas Business Journal, and it was a couple of years ago. So I'm sure the statistics have only improved. But we're working with six-digit earners, right? So these are, it's a high wage group. Traditionally, it's technology goods and services. So, it's hardware, software, consulting, data centers, cloud, security, um, hardware recyclers, staffing companies, anyone who has a product or a service that would be used by technology executives at companies would be our sponsors. And our website is technologyball.com. There is a contact us page where people can get in touch, but basically info@technologyball.com will get an email to my team and to me. And, again, we're pretty curated and pretty bespoke. Another thing that we did in pivoting to this virtual model is, we wanted to be mindful of the fact that a lot of these sponsors had signed up for conferences, back in, even the fall, that they were planning for the springtime, and they put tens of thousands of dollars into these conferences. And in some cases, they just didn't get that money back. And, there's not really been a rescheduled date. So it was just money lost. So they were very leery of investing more money in the potential that Karen and Technology Ball could deliver. So I moved to a pay-as-you-go model, and people can participate in Technology Ball for as little as $500 per month. So our sponsorships start at $3,500 and go up from there. And people are getting multiple touch points with CIOs for that investment. And, we've really just moved that, rather than, sending a bill for $3,500 or for $10,000 or wherever they invest. They are able to chop that payment up and pay monthly, which makes it a little bit more digestible. And then also, if something happens with their business or they don't like what we're delivering, there is an opportunity for them. They have an exit strategy, right? So I have always approached my business as being a partner to the sponsors that participate. And, I'm in this to help them drive business. And I wanted to create an environment that was accessible to them financially in this market.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of advice would you give to maybe a tech company that probably just stepped off a cliff, you could say, to the start of their business, give or take, let's say 3 years ago, and they're kind of in a tough spot, but they know they need your services? How would you go about giving some talking points, or just like steps to move forward, given that we've had the economy shut down for pretty much half the year almost? What would you recommend to those guys?
Yeah, I would say that there's so much competition in technology. It is such a coveted space because there are so many dollars at stake. And I have had CIOs tell me, that they get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails a day. They literally don't read their emails unless they know who the email is coming from. So there are services out there where you can buy lists and you can buy email addresses, and you're just not getting in front of the right people. And you might be getting in front of them, but the people you're trying to get in front of don't know it because they're not reading that email. I had a call, one of my Technology Ball calls. There was somebody who was trying to get in front of a very large multi-billion-dollar company in Dallas. They happen to be a manufacturer of toilet paper. So I asked the CIO, he's not the CIO, but I asked a VP of IT there. I said, do you have toilet paper? I said, the burning question on everyone's mind is, how's toilet paper in your world? But one of my sponsors said they were trying for years to get in front of that company. And because I had this intimate call, they were able to connect on LinkedIn, and they got a meeting with that company directly from one of these Zoom calls that I hosted. So, that's a great success story. And I don't think that company saw that coming in COVID-19, in this environment, to be able to open that door. And then, another one of my customers told me they've been trying to get in front of one of the big hospitals here in town. And, through Technology Ball, they were able to set up a meeting that they had been working on for 3 or 4 years. And they were able to do that after just one meeting through Technology Ball. So I think there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of noise out there, and you need to find a way, if it's Technology Ball, I love that. But if it's not Technology Ball, finding something to differentiate yourself and to have your voice heard. I think it's very important to invest in a platform that would give you that opportunity so that you can cut through some of the noise. Everyone feels like they have a product or service that is distinct and unique, and it's the one that needs to be purchased. But that information is not helpful if you can't share it. So I would say, particularly in the tech space, just, finding a platform to get out there and get in front of the people that are making decisions. And then once you land a client, leveraging that client, word of mouth and referrals are very important in this sector as well. So, a lot of tech companies start because they've been doing business with some particular company and they have done enough business to generate their own company. And I would say leveraging their current client base is an important strategy as well.
Okay. So let's kind of go back to how we can find you again. Go ahead and let's get some contact info, like a website, email
Yeah,
address. How can we get a hold of you?
great. So www.technologyball.com and info@technologyball.com is an email address that would get to me and my team. And on our website, we have a sponsor tab that shows a grid of our current model. So it sort of shows what you get at each sponsorship level in the current virtual environment. And those are really the best ways to reach me and my team.
Okay, good stuff, good stuff. So we'll kind of tie it up here with the last couple of quick questions. So I guess we can go start with any big plans. So the economy is kind of opening up pretty soon. What kind of your plan moving forward with the openings coming up?
It's a great question. Do you have any ideas for me? Because because I'm not sure. No, we are looking to continue the virtual model until such time that we are able to meet in person. Our community, everyone's anxious to have a three-dimensional experience, right? To get in front of other human beings and to get outside their four walls. And our community is no different. We're looking to send out a survey to our community to sort of get a temperature from them about what they're looking for. But on a recent call, I've also done some calls just for my CIOs to be able to collaborate with each other. And, as I mentioned earlier, these are the people who have stood their companies up and they've pivoted to virtual, and they were expected to do it without any problems. They were supposed to pull it off without a hitch. And that had to be incredibly stressful. Some of these companies have 200 employees. Some of them have 50,000 employees around the world. And that was just a lot. On Thursday, they found out everyone was going to be working from home on Monday, right? So there was not a lot of lead time.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot needed to be put in place to flip that switch. So I provided an environment for them to collaborate with each other. And, one of them told me it was kind of like therapy, because they were able to just share and complain, really. And they haven't been able to do that and to commiserate. So I had another one of those calls and found out that even if they as individuals would like to get together at a Technology Ball event, some of their companies have policies in place that are preventing them from work meetings with people outside their own company. So even if they wanted to get together for Technology Ball events, they're actually forbidden from doing so. So I need to dig a little bit further to find out, and it might be that I have a hybrid. It might be that I have an in-person event for the people who want it and are able to do it, and then continue with a virtual model. What I do know is that, I will not move away from a curated, bespoke environment where I'm really targeting specifically for my sponsors and really trying to get them directly in front of the CIOs. There's no value for them if they're just in the audience and they're looking at a CIO on the screen and they're sort of a nameless, faceless person in the audience. So my goal is to make sure that they have a name, they have a face, and they have a voice that they're able to engage directly with some of these tech decision makers. So whatever I do, that will be a piece of it.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I think that ties it up for today. So we definitely appreciate you coming on today, sharing the ideas about tech ball. And so I guess I would just say moving forward, for anybody that wants to get in front of decision makers, you definitely want to see technologyball.com. You can email that at info.technologyball.com, and we'll drop the links in the description. And we will see you guys next week.
Great. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Take